This is the greatest weapon in video game history. A feat of engineering and design so impressive that it single-handedly redefines the game it's in, elevating its skill ceiling to new heights, and providing infinite possibilities for what can be accomplished within it. This is what all weapons aspire to be, a premier example of what every developer seeks to accomplish, yet always fails to reach. A balanced beauty that's never been overpowered or underpowered throughout the entire history of its existence. It's always been the absolute pinnacle of what a video game weapon should be. And the best part? It does so without ever having to kill a single enemy. This is Deep Rock Galactic's platform gun, and why it's the single greatest weapon in video game history. Before I continue any further, it's important that I define what makes a good video game weapon. By my estimation, there are 3 attributes a weapon must excel at to be considered truly well designed. The first of these is application. What do you do with the weapon? Pretty self-explanatory. Using a good weapon should be an engaging and well-presented experience for the player, first and foremost. The second is integration. How does the weapon affect the environment, NPCs, or other players? A good weapon should make a significant impact on the game itself, being well integrated with other aspects of the game beyond its immediate influence. Lastly, we have depth. How much is there to be learned or improved upon as the player becomes more proficient with the weapon? This is often the hardest part for developers to get right. A weapon with little depth will be easily forgotten or replaced by the player because of how short the player's journey was in reaching the weapon's ceiling. A good weapon should have a gradual and satisfying learning curve, with the player feeling a natural sense of progression as they get better and better with the weapon. There are many prominent weapons in video games that excel in 1 or 2 of these categories, but it's rare to find one that nails all 3. For example, Counter-Strike's Op is a weapon with a good application and good integration with the game's environment through its influence on positioning, but there's not much depth to be found in the actual use of the weapon itself, past the occasional wallbang tech and the general improvement of one's aim. That being said, the Op is still head and shoulders above 90% of weapons design-wise, as you don't have to look far to find games with weapons that don't hit any of these categories. I'm looking at you, TF2. Anyways, the point of all of this is to show just how difficult it is to make a truly great weapon. So much so that there's only a handful of prominent weapons that excel at all 3 of these categories. Fox's Shine, Soldier's Rocket Launcher, Mario's Flash Liquidizer Ultra Dousing Device. These are some of the only examples of what I consider truly great digital weaponry. And above all of them is the engineer's platform gun, a near-perfect weapon in a near-perfect game. Just how is this possible? The platform gun is categorized in Deep Rock Galactic as a traversal tool. Each of the 4 classes have their own respective traversal tools, ranging from incredibly cumbersome and slow to near instantaneous burst movement at the click of a button. These tools are all built to accomplish one of 2 things: help the dwarf or help the team. The scout's grappling hook only directly helps the dwarf using the tool, rather than the team around him. Conversely, the gunner's zipline helps the team move around much more than the gunner alone, who's typically much better off just dashing or mining to wherever he needs to go rather than slowly meandering his way there on his zipline. The engineer's traversal tool, however, manages to straddle the line between helping the dwarf individually and helping the team as a group. Let's start with the former. The platform gun gives the engineer wielding it near constant control of the terrain around him. By merely clicking the left mouse button, the engineer can use the plascrete foam fired from the nozzle in a variety of situations, such as escaping deep holes, getting to the drop pod quickly, reaching minerals normally out of your range, creating platforms to more easily take on bosses, and becoming an absolute master of parkour, which we'll get to later. The platform gun is the flex tape of Deep Rock Galactic. There isn't a single situation where it can't benefit the engineer in some way. Even in solo missions without the support of his teammates, the utility of the platform gun allows for the engineer to become a one-man dwarf army. Carl would be proud of such ingenuity. For Carl! But what about when the engineer needs to help the team? Well, the genius of the platform's design is that they often accidentally trick the engineer into helping his team, even if he didn't intend to. For example, if an engineer uses platforms to escape a deep hole in the cave, then he's also incidentally created a path for his teammates to use as well. Every use of the platform gun creates infrastructure that other dwarves can use to their own advantage in traversing the cave. On top of that, there's a handful of upgrades that assist the engineer's support of platform use. Most notably, the Plascrete Mark II upgrade, which reduces fall damage on the platforms, and the Repellent additive, which forces enemies to avoid walking on the platforms altogether. The latter upgrade is of particular note. This allows for some of the most insane strategies the engineer can utilize in order to make missions much easier, something we'll talk about much later in this video. All of this means that the platform gun is always incredibly helpful, even in the hands of a greenbeard. Whether it's a solo mission or a team effort, the engineer's platforms offer immense utility that isn't matched by any other class. In terms of application, the platform gun is an absolute 10 out of 10 weapon. One of the biggest strengths of DRG is its characters and how they interact with each other. The different ways in which the dwarves coordinate with each other in order to more efficiently take down the glyphids is arguably the most important part of what makes DRG so fun, and that aspect of the game is perfectly exemplified by the platform gun. When a platform is placed by the engineer, it offers a passive buff to each of the other class's traversal tools. The driller can drill to the platform, offering more maneuverability in locating minerals or side objectives. The gunner can use the platform as an anchoring point, giving more options for carrying heavy objects to the mule or the minehead. And the best one of all, the engineer and the scout can combo the platform gun and the grappling hook to make the scout the ultimate resource gathering machine. Seriously, if an engineer and a scout are on the same page, it can almost make the rest of the team feel obsolete by comparison. Like, what's the point in drilling or ziplining up to some morkite when you basically have Spider-Man on your team, and he can thwip and release his way to the objective faster than you ever could? The coordination between engineer and scout perfectly exemplifies why the platform gun is so well designed. It rewards experimentation by offering new ways to coordinate with your teammates that wouldn't be possible otherwise. It's also worth adding that the platforms are well integrated with your enemies as much as your allies. As previously mentioned, platforms make for excellent impromptu boss arenas, and can be used as escape tools by both the engineer and his team in dire situations. And of course, the repellent upgrade gives the platforms added functionality as impassable barriers that can be placed defensively in tunnels to confuse the enemy AI. Also, there's a couple unique ways to deal with specific enemies using platforms, such as muzzling spitballers or making large pillars to block incoming fireballs from dreadnoughts. All in all, the platform gun feels incredibly well integrated with its surrounding environment. It offers the engineer numerous ways of intentionally assisting his team, as well as forcing enemy glyphids to respond to the platforms in a unique way. In terms of integration, the platform gun is a 10 out of 10. The depth of the platform gun is one of its most enticing features. There's such a naturally high skill ceiling baked into its design that it would be hard for me to confidently state that everything this weapon has to offer has been discovered. As such, I'm only going to go over some of my personal favorite techniques and skills that can be practiced by aspiring engineers to make them just that much better at the game. One of the most common examples of the platform gun's depth is platform jumping, or the practice of jumping, shooting a platform midair, landing on it, and then repeating until you've reached the desired location. Basically, it's platform parkour. I personally recommend practicing this in biomes with many stalactites and stalagmites, as those are prime targets for the placement of your platforms. Maintaining speed is the key to mastering this technique, especially when used with one particular upgrade. But who needs silly upgrades when you can straight up cancel the platform gun's firing animation by right-clicking after the platform has been fired? Using this technique allows for you to completely ignore the firing speed upgrades in the upgrade tree, and also makes the disabled inertia inhibitor upgrade completely obsolete. This frees up space in the upgrade tree to equip the previously mentioned repellent upgrade. This upgrade alone offers a number of different applications that players can practice, such as roofing. By placing a layer of platforms above an important area, such as next to the drop pod during a salvage mission, you can very slowly funnel bugs into a meat grinder, allowing for waves to be completed much easier on higher difficulties. This is a skill that's incredibly difficult to master, as it takes a solid grasp on platform positioning and team coordination to pull off. There's also the more niche uses of the platform gun, such as using it in combination with the drill dozer to place floating sentries. This is probably helpful, but what's certainly helpful is placing platforms at the top of the Hearthstone's laser crystals, allowing the crystals to be taken down much quicker, especially by a scout. The variations in these applications just go to show how much the platform gun rewards the player for improving and experimenting with how they know the game to work. The platform gun is designed and contextualized in such a way that it's near impossible to feel like you figured everything out. In terms of its depth, the platform gun is, once again, a 10 out of 10 weapon. That makes 3 perfect scores in all of the criteria being covered. It's the absolute pinnacle of video game weapons. except for one little thing. I'm sure that some of you watching this video have been itching to comment about how the platform gun isn't a weapon. Because, oh, you know, it can't exactly kill anything. The most it can really do is repel enemies, but that's hardly indicative of it being a weapon. In fact, by most accounts, it's a tool. Even the game itself would agree with that, so why am I referring to it as a weapon? Well, Merriam-Webster gives two definitions for the word weapon as a noun. The first is the one most people use when discussing video games. Something used to injure, defeat, or destroy. Though it could be argued the platform gun is used to defeat the glyphids on Hoxus 4, that's more of a stretch of the truth than a justified interpretation of the definition. By all accounts, operating under these rules, the platform gun is not a weapon. However, looking at the second definition gives us a more interesting outlook on weapons in video games. A means of contending against another. The platform gun certainly fits this definition. Even if it doesn't directly kill or injure anything, it certainly is used to contend against the enemy bugs. Which definition is better suited is up to you, but I personally lean towards the latter. This is because I think the former definition is incredibly limiting when it comes to developing weapons in video games. If a developer's job is to create 4 weapons for 4 slots in a character's kit, they should be able to fill those slots with tools that don't necessarily result in the direct injury of the opponent. Otherwise, a character might be given weapons that contradict their core identity, such as, oh, I don't know, giving a pacifist field medic a gun? Look, if you want to operate under the more typical definition of a weapon, I understand. It makes sense that a device like the platform gun would appear more as a tool than a weapon, when it doesn't have a direct effect on the enemies it's used against. But what does it say about the quality of the platform gun's design, that its lack of direct firepower is made up for by the indirect offensive benefits it offers to the team? The platform gun, at its highest level, can single-handedly stagger entire enemy waves. It can offer huge positioning benefits for the team, as well as the engineer himself, giving his sentries the leverage to tear through bugs endlessly without ever being hampered. The absolute control that the platform gun imposes onto the battlefield is unequaled. It's such a potent offensive tool that it has the potential to single-handedly invalidate the enemy threat, causing every glyphid appendage to buckle under the weight of its punishing plascrete pressure. Sounds like a weapon to me.